Let's continue. AGL Galpur. Okay, so 1d4, we've been playing the Queen's Gambit declined. Okay, so e4 is the Blackmar Diemer Gambit. You will, thank you on Microd for the prime. You will see this at, the beginner level. You'll even occasionally see this at a high level. And the best way to respond to the Blackmar Diemer is to take this pawn. He's probably going to go f3. That's okay. Knight c3. So, let me remember. So now we go knight f6. We defend the pawn. He's going to go f3. He's probably going to go f3. All right. I guess he doesn't really know how to continue. The point of the Blackmar Diemer is kind of a Smith-Morra on the opposite side of the board, right? If you've seen the Smith-Morra on the Sicilian, yeah, he does go f3. So let me try to remember something, guys. Give me a second, please. Yeah, so in the name of playing very solidly, taking the pawn on f3 is not the best. It is the best move from a computer perspective. White does not have enough compensation for the pawn, period. Okay? But very often when you want to disarm a gambit, you want to do something that's in the middle, right? You want to give away the pawn, but in return, get something resembling a development advantage. So let's forget about this pawn for a second. We don't need to do anything with it. What development move can you guys offer? So there's bishop f5, and I'll explain why that's not as good as it looks afterward. But the move that I propose is knight c6. It actually does counterattack the pawn. White has the move d5 here, which would force this knight to move and would slide into the e5 square, which is a knight up. Okay, he goes bishop f4, so he's insisting on sacrificing the pawn. And that is not a good move. It allows us now to take the pawn on d4, and there's no reason not to take this pawn, right? His center has collapsed, and he's giving up way too many pawns here. Right, so we're being very flexible in our thinking process, right? Knight b5, okay. So he's trying to be intimidating, like he's making moves that may look a little bit scary. But calculation allows you to take the sting out of moves like these all the time. Okay, so the first question, the obvious question is, can we take the knight? Is there any reason not to take the knight? Thank you, Gray Broken Chair. The only reason that I would even think about is, well, he can take the queen and deprive us of castling rights. But again, he's down 2 pawns. He's trading a lot of pieces, and just because our king is on d8 doesn't mean we're going to get checkmated. So we're going to take on b5, and maybe he's attracted to the concept of taking with check. Nope, he takes the queen. And he is going to take the knight. Now, maybe he'll castle. Yeah, I was about to say that. Now, this is a common mistake, right? He thinks he's going to make an in-between move and then, leisurely take the knight. But he's missed that we can simultaneously move this knight and defend against the check at the same time. That is basically the game. We're up 2 pawns now and a piece. Bishop. Okay, so he plays bishop anyway. But while I cannot take this bishop, this move loses any of its use. Okay, so now we need to focus, as we always do, on developing our pieces and not forgetting about our development, even though it's an endgame. We can just play bishop d7 here, offering the trade of bishops. Again, if there is if there's a clear path to simplification when you're up, material, then you should go for it. King takes d7. Then we're going to play e6 and bishop e7. And again, you shouldn't overthink the technique here. Actually, now let's take on f3. Now that he's moved his knight away from g1, a very classy move here would be what? What would be sort of the most clinical move? So I would propose h6, right? I would ask myself, well, where is this knight going? It's probably going to g5. Let's stop it from going to g5. Not necessary, but clinical. Now we can proceed with the development of this bishop. We could have also gone g5 and fianchettoed it. That would have been possible. Yeah, but okay, bishop e7. Then we'll bring a rook to d8 and step aside with the king. Okay. So this is Super straightforward play. That's why I'm playing fast. This is something that you get with practice, right? Technique and converting advantages of this kind is something that just involves you practicing getting the intuition for these kinds of positions. All right, king c6 is also fine. But because we're up a piece, again, we don't have to bring our king to the center. The sort of standard endgame rules aren't as important. Yeah, so I basically, the original speedrun we've sort of ended at a rating of about 2370, which we were going to go to 2500. But unfortunately, I'm encountering a ton of cheaters in the 5-minute pool at that level. So I feel like, you know, we've played enough high-level games to satisfy the higher-rated guys among you. But this, I think, is what will really help us round off this notion of a speedrun. Now we have more time to talk about the game itself during the game. And I'm not commenting on these moves because I'm doing obvious stuff. And I'll answer after the game. So this will also all be on YouTube. All right, now we're just going to push this pawn. And we're going to step aside to the bishop. Now, what would be the fastest method of winning from this point on? Who can propose a plan? Obviously, it's weird to talk about a plan here. We're up 100 pieces and pawns. But what can you guys suggest here? Okay, so we don't need to use our king, actually. We don't need to use our king. All we need to do is realize that this bishop and this pawn aren't quite enough to tackle the king. And bishop e3, he can go king g3. But we can simply make another pass pawn. We can go f5, g5, g4. And the two connected passers in combination with the bishop are enough material to force promotion. We don't need to use our king at all. g3, and watch what happens, right? Now, the one thing you don't want to do is play h2, which allows the king to blockade the pawns himself. What we do want to do is do what? We can go either g2 or even slightly more precise is to go bishop e3 check first, then go g2 and g1, right? All right, g1 queen. And the fastest mate is to realize that this square is the mating square. We can prevent the king from going any further and then deliver checkmate on g3. White has plenty of pawn moves, so there's no stalemate. Okay, so let's talk about the game and then we'll end the stream. Now, in the Blackmar Diemer, white also sometimes goes f3 immediately. And life pro tip, the best move for black here is to counter strike in the center with e5. This is the refutation. And the point is that if d takes e5, you simply take the queen. And not only do you, not only is white now uncastled, but you can go knight c6. And you develop your knight quickly, you attack this pawn. White is in very big trouble here. And what you also have to realize, folks, is that when people play a gambit, gotta play the psychology there. What are people who play gambit generally looking for? They're generally looking for sharp positions, positions with a lot of tactics, and even if you play the line that's not the best, but you play a line that gets into a type of position they're not comfortable with, that could be worth its weight in gold. So just remember that when you're deciding what line to play. Knight c3, knight f6, f3 is the right way to play. Now bishop f5 looks like a great move because it simultaneously develops a piece and defends the pawn on e4. But remember something I said in the first game. One of the issues of developing your pieces without moving out any pawns is that these pieces can become susceptible to pawns kind of trampling all over them. And there's a nice kind of idea that white has here, which does exactly that. It's similar to what we did, it's just on the other side of the board. It looks crazy, but it wins the e4 pawn. What am I talking about here? So use your imagination. Yeah, g4 and g5. And the pawn is lost. So you might say, well, wait a second. Isn't this extremely weakening? Well, no, it's not that weakening. And black is still better here. But there's no reason to allow this. Кто-то явно не спал. Да. Так оно и было. Нет, я спал просто я спал. Да. Spal 2 часа дня. Alright. So, yeah, knight takes e4. Yeah, we're not talking about Jordan Peterson right now. We're talking about the game. And does that make sense? But so it's not that weakening. Alright, it's not that weakening. Because white can still develop his pieces in castle. Alright. So, knight c6. Bishop f4 is a follow-up mistake. So white should play d5, and as is often the case, we sneak the knight into e5, establishing it. F takes e4, and one thing we can do here is undermine white's pawn by playing e6. And I want you guys to notice how white no longer has the f pawn, which means that black can bring the bishop out to c5 and prevent white from castling short because it covers the g1 square. So this position is one of those things that somebody who would play the Blackmar Diemer might not necessarily want something that's kind of a positional grind. All right. So bishop f4, knight takes d4. And here, at the very least, f takes e4 should have been preferred. Okay. But now we can get the bishop out to g4. And black is up a pawn and dominating in the center as well. So he exacerbated the problem by playing knight b5. This allows the trade of a lot of pieces. And after bishop takes b5, which he should have played, what would be a good approach for black here? And black has to be a little bit careful because he is threatening to castle and causes some concrete problems. So how could we deal with that in one way? All right, so we could play the move c6. Bingo. Good job. And after castles, we can play either bishop d7, or we could simply go king e8, tuck the king away, back to e8, and then develop the bishop, move the pawn out, and develop the other bishop. All right, and we're up 2 pawns. We're in great shape here. I wouldn't say the game is over, but for a grandmaster being down 2 pawns in the endgame, basically the game would be over. Thank you, Corvo. All right, so after he blundered the knight, or after he allowed knight d6, now the game really is over. Everything else we do, simple matter. We stop the knight from coming to g5, and that's basically it. Okay, so essentially we bring the rook in, we tuck the king away, and we trade everything down the d file and win the game. It's very simple. Very, very simple. Give it to Danya. Well, I would never refuse it. I appreciate it. All right. So, any questions about this this game? This was a pretty straightforward conversion. It doesn't matter which rook to bring behind the king. At this point, it's purely academic. All right. At this point, it's just purely a matter of bringing any rook. Yeah. So this is all very, very straightforward. Nothing really to write home about. Okay. So once again, we go e4. And once again, we're going to attempt the Danish Gambit. I want you guys to see, though, how amazing my positions are in this opening. Partly because nobody has actually taken the pawn. Okay, so knight to f6. That is a move we haven't seen before. And the issue with this move is much the same. I don't think it's a bad move. But I think the issue with it is much the same as the issue with sort of knight c6, which is that he's developing his pieces, but those pieces are going to get trampled on by my pieces and pawns because they're not established. So we take the pawn on e5. And now this knight on e4, again, it looks intimidating, it's centralized, but it can be attacked in a variety of different ways. So notice that black wants to support the knight by playing d7 to d5. So a move like bishop d3 or a move like queen e2 would allow d5. But actually, but no, queen e2 would not allow d5. Queen e2 is a really interesting move. So bishop c4, I really, really like, because bishop c4 prevents him from playing d5 and aims at the f7 pawn, and it threatens queen d5, which I probably in my own game, I would play the move queen d5 here, attacking the knight. But I want to be a little bit more flexible, and I think unless he reacts very precisely, bishop c4 is going to be an absolute crusher. Does this make... I hope this makes sense. Yeah, exactly, drunk chess. So now he has to deal with... Okay, so c6 is a good move. That's a very good move, actually. He prepares d5, and he prevents me from going queen d5. Kudos to my opponent. So let's see. Now we have a couple ways to play this position. Let me think about this for a second. Okay, now attacking this knight with queen e2 is a really good idea. Now, a lot of you guys are saying, wait a second, this is a fork. But after queen f3, d5, he defends the knight. And if we take en passant in that position, then the knight returns to take the pawn on d6, attacking the bishop and defending the f7 pawn. So at the end of the day, we haven't really gained anything. I feel like this pawn on e5 is kind of valuable. I don't really want to trade it because it's clamping down on black's position. So instead, we will go with queen e2. You guys might say, well, wait a second. How does this stop d5? Who can explain that to me? And perhaps he will even play d5. I don't think so. I think he'll go knight c5. But what happens after d5? How is this different from queen f3? Excellent. En passant is a pin. It pins the knight. That's the point. Now, queen e2 also permanently stops d5 or d6. But let's develop our pieces quickly. Maybe some of you are attracted by a move like b4. Again, there's no need to attack this knight. That actually weakens the queen side for no good reason. Instead, we can decide now on which side we want to castle on. This is a good opportunity to practice this kind of decision making. Because let's think about what we gain from both castles. Now, one thing that you should realize is that in the long run, okay, stopping the motion of the d-pawn is going to be a really good thing. It's going to make it very hard for black to actually develop this bishop. And from that perspective, which way would you guys think is a good idea to castle? Yeah, castling long takes one move longer, but we want to develop these pieces anyway, so that's not really an argument. Yeah, queenside, because that rook is going to prevent the motion of the d-pawn. It's going to x-ray the queen. In addition, it's pretty reasonable to assume that we're going to probably attack on the king side, and castling queenside never hurts for that purpose. Okay. Knight c3. Now, here's another... Okay, so he's gone d5. He sort of lost his patience and allowed him... So actually, he might have found a nice move here because he might want to win this pawn back. Although we're going to try to stop him from doing that. Okay, whoa. He's going to win it back, but it's going to come at great price. King d7 is a little bit extreme. Now, our thinking does not, or our course of action doesn't really change. We can develop this bishop to what square? And actually, this is a little bit of a tricky moment. Now, I think almost all of you want to play bishop f4, but the funny thing is, after bishop f4, he has the nasty move queen to e8, offering the queen trade, and we certainly don't want to trade queens here. That's really going to hold us back. So instead of clinging to this pawn, let's let him take it. Because by letting him take it, now the d-file is going to be the sort of main avenue of attack. So we actually want him to take that pawn. And this move attacks the knight. So it does everything. And I mean, you should never be afraid to give up a pawn like that. When you can sense that his king is in such danger, don't worry about clinging to a pawn. Always try to have your priorities in order in any position, any given position. So bishop f7, yeah, so now we castle. And now we're threatening to take the knight on c5. There's very little, well, he can move the knight, but then we're going to do something down that d-file. Yeah. So, not really forcing. Okay, so king e8, obviously. He also walks into a discovery. We can also play bishop g5 check. The clinical move, I suppose, is bishop g5 check. And actually, yeah, let's play bishop g5 check, because that wins the queen. Notice how I'm always looking for the best move. I'm not a lot of people would automatically take on c5, right? But I'm taking a moment and asking myself, okay, I have a discovered check. When you have a discovered check, you got to look at all of the possible discovered checks, because you might find something that's even more convincing than, yeah, and this causes resignation. So yeah, the Danish has been incredibly successful thus far. People really struggle with it. I would say below 6, even at a 1800 level, as I'm sure we'll see. All right. So quick look at this game. Yeah, knight f6, e94, bishop c4. Now, what should he have done here? I don't know. I think that black is already in very big trouble. It may be... Now, just one thing. If instead we go bishop c5, can white play queen to d5? Yeah, it's really fun opening. Can white play queen to d5? Rus Mafian, thank you so much. I appreciate it. So, I think the jury is out on this. The answer is yes, because after bishop f2 check, you're not afraid of this. Look at how black's pieces are all hanging, and mate is threatened. Black is going to lose a piece. So this is a mentality that's super important. This mentality of not having knee-jerk reactions to your opponent's moves. A lot of us would look at this move and say, well, wait a second, this threatens f2. I need to defend that. Moves like knight h3 or bishop e3 is something I would see at a beginner level. But even if you are a beginner, you can make a conscious effort to see the bigger picture, to put your opponent's moves in greater context, and to understand whether his threats are truly dangerous and whether you can't make ESTs, equal or stronger threats. Right? Well, with time pressure, nobody can really manage that. c6, queen e2. Once again, if queen f3, then d5 en passant and knight takes d6. Black is completely fine here. Yeah, bishop f7 is okay, but it only wins a pawn. Bishop f7 is okay, but at the end of the day, it only wins a pawn, and queen d5 wins a piece. So it's flashy, but queen d5 is better. All right, so knight c5, knight c3. d5 en passant. He should have covered with his bishop. Now here, yeah, again, we would have played bishop e3 and then castle with an overwhelming initiative. And king d7, bishop e3, bishop d6 castles. Actually, no matter what he would have done, if he would have played knight e6, what would have been white's most clinical move here? There's a move that ends the game immediately here. And again, try to think optimistically. What question do you want to ask yourself here? Well, you look at this position, you say, wait a second, I've got this huge pin. It stems naturally from the spin that you should try to put pressure on the bishop. Look around the board. What pieces could attack that bishop? Well, can we go bishop f4? No, there's a knight there. We can go knight e4. And that attacks the bishop, wins the bishop, and wins the game. Okay, that move ends the game immediately. Bishop c5 is the right principle, but again, it blunders the bishop. Right, this knight on e6, have to make sure you're seeing what squares it's controlling. Okay. Fantastic, guys. So I hope you enjoyed the game. Hope you enjoyed these games. We are up to 924 on the speedrun, second speedrun. And once we reach 1,000, 1,100s, the games will be slightly longer. But yeah, I hope you guys are enjoying the second edition. I hope I'm delivering on my promise to try to keep things as instructive as the first speedrun. Even though I know I'm not trying to sort of live in the former glory of the first speedrun. Hopefully we're tackling some new themes, and we will continue to do that as I climb through the ranks. Thank you. I really appreciate everybody's support. Every sub, every member of the community is very valued. So I think it's time to pause. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great rest of the day. Take care. Bye.